I didn't know this man. Never met him. But he died with my business card in his pocket and a note, "You've been here before." The phone rang at 3:17 a.m. In my line of work, calls at this hour rarely bring good news. I fumbled for the receiver, sleep still clouding my thoughts. "Carter," I mumbled, running a hand through my disheveled hair. "Detective Carter. This is Officer Marlowe from the LAPD." The voice was crisp, professional. Too alert for this hour. I sat up straighter, instantly more awake. "What can I do for LAPD at this ungodly hour?" "We need you to come down to the station. There's been an incident that, well, it appears to involve you." A chill ran down my spine. "Involve me how?" "I'd rather discuss it in person, sir." The line went dead before I could protest. I stared at the phone for a moment, listening to the dial tone buzz in my ear like an angry wasp. Whatever this was, it wasn't standard procedure. I lived in a modest apartment in downtown Los Angeles, close enough to the precinct that I could walk there in 15 minutes. The night air felt unusually cold for February in LA, and the streets were eerily quiet. Even the usual night crawlers seemed to have sought shelter. Only the occasional flicker of neon signs disturbed the darkness, casting momentary pools of red and blue across the wet asphalt. Officer Marlowe was waiting for me at the precinct entrance, a tall man with a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow and eyes that had seen more than their fair share of humanity's darker side. "Thanks for coming so quickly, Detective Carter," he said, extending a hand. I shook it briefly. "Not like you gave me much choice. What's this about?" He led me through the fluorescent-lit corridors of the station. The place smelled of stale coffee and bureaucracy. "We found a body tonight," Marlowe explained as we walked. "Male, Caucasian, early 40s. No signs of foul play." I frowned. "And this concerns me because..." Marlowe pushed open the door to a small interview room. Inside, a manila folder lay on the table. "Because of what we found in his pocket." He flipped open the folder and slid a photograph across the table. The image showed a pale man with neatly combed blonde hair, lying peacefully on what looked like a morgue slab. His eyes were closed, his features relaxed, as if he'd simply decided to take a nap and never wake up. "Ever seen him before?" Marlowe asked, studying my face. I examined the photo carefully. The man looked vaguely familiar, like someone you might pass on the street without a second glance. But I couldn't place him. "I don't think so." "Who is he?" "His name is Daniel Haynes. Worked at the City Library Archives. Lived alone." Marlowe paused, his eyes never leaving mine. "We found your business card in his wallet." My pulse quickened. I handed out dozens of cards each month to potential clients, witnesses, contacts. It wasn't unusual for strangers to have my information. "I give out a lot of cards, officer. Doesn't mean I know everyone who has one." Marlowe's expression remained neutral. "Of course. But there's more." He pulled out a clear evidence bag containing a small notebook. Through the plastic, I could see a page with my name written in neat, precise handwriting. Next to it were the words, "You've been here before." What is this supposed to mean? I asked, an inexplicable sense of dread settling in my stomach. "We were hoping you could tell us." His landlord found him this morning. No signs of struggle, no forced entry. Medical examiner's preliminary report suggests a heart attack, but... Marlowe trailed off. "But what?" "But nothing seems quite right." The apartment was immaculate, like he was expecting company. Everything neatly arranged. And then there's this. He slid another photo across the table. It showed a desk calendar. The date, February 12th, was circled in red. Written below it, "Meeting with Carter." Today was February 15th. "I'd like to see the body," I said. Marlowe nodded, as if he'd been expecting this request. He led me down to the basement morgue, the temperature dropping with each step. The antiseptic smell grew stronger, mixing with that unmistakable undercurrent that no amount of chemicals could fully mask. The medical examiner, a petite woman with graying hair pulled back in a tight bun, greeted us with a curt nod. She pulled back the sheet covering Haynes without ceremony. Up close, he looked even more peaceful. No visible trauma, no signs of distress in his final moments. Just a man who appeared to have simply stopped living. Anything unusual? I asked the examiner. She gave me a sideways glance. Nothing obvious. Toxicology isn't back yet. Heart looks healthy for a man his age, no blockages I could see. Could be an arrhythmia, but... She shrugged. I've seen cleaner cases. I leaned in closer, examining Haynes's hands. Clean nails, no defensive wounds. A small ink stain on his right index finger, the mark of someone who wrote frequently. Anything in his system? Alcohol, medications? Just a mild sleeping aid. Nothing that should have caused this. She covered the body again. I'll know more when the full workup comes back. As we left the morgue, Marlowe handed me a copy of the initial report. You're not officially involved in this case, Carter. I'm just doing you a courtesy because of the connection. I nodded, appreciating his discretion. Can I see his apartment? Already processed by CSU. Nothing flagged. I can give you the address, but technically, you shouldn't be there. Technically, I repeated with a thin smile. Marlowe scribbled an address on a notepad and tore off the page. I didn't give you this. Give me what? I pocketed the address. The drive to Haynes's apartment took me through the quieter residential areas of Los Feliz. The building was a well-maintained Art Deco structure from the 1930s, the kind that had once housed Hollywood supporting actors and writers. Now it was home to professors, librarians, and other middle-income professionals who appreciated its faded glamour. I parked across the street and observed the building for several minutes. Light spilled from a few windows, but most were dark. It was nearly 5 a.m. now. The night sky was beginning to lighten at the edges, transforming from pitch black to a deep indigo. The security in the lobby was minimal, an ancient intercom system that no one had bothered to lock after the police had finished their work. I found Haynes's apartment on the third floor, at the end of a carpeted hallway lined with identical doors. Crime scene tape crossed the entrance, but the seal had been broken. Someone had already been here after the police left. I slipped on a pair of latex gloves from my pocket, an old habit from my days on the force, and carefully pushed the door open. The apartment was exactly as Marlowe had described, immaculate. Everything in its place, surfaces dusted, floors vacuumed. It didn't feel lived in so much as prepared, like a stage set awaiting its actors. The living room contained a modest leather sofa, a coffee table with precisely arranged magazines, and bookshelves lining one wall. I examined the titles, mostly history, philosophy, and a surprising number of books on theoretical physics. One volume lay open on a side table, Time Loop, Theories of Closed Events. A yellow post-it marked a page with a handwritten note, Causality Violation. The kitchen was equally tidy, dishes washed and put away, counters wiped clean, not even a coffee mug left out. The refrigerator contained fresh groceries, enough for several days. Haynes hadn't expected to die. I moved to the bedroom. The bed was made with hospital corners, a single pillow perfectly centered against the headboard. The closet revealed clothing arranged by color and type, shoes aligned with mathematical precision. On the bedside table sat a leather-bound journal. I flipped it open, scanning the entries. Most were mundane, work notes, grocery lists, the occasional movie review. But the last few pages caught my attention. February 8th, found something in the archives today. Section 47B, restricted access. Need to look closer tomorrow. February 9th, the Reisman file. It's real. Cross-referenced with microfilm records. It matches. But how is this possible? February 10th, called the number. Carter is my only option now. They're watching. February 11th, prepared everything. Meeting Carter tomorrow. Must make him understand what's at stake. The loop can be broken. February 12th, he didn't believe me. I'll try again. Time isn't linear, I've seen the proof. The final entry, dated February 14th, they're coming. If you're reading this, AC, remember, you've been here before. The mirror tells the truth. I closed the journal, my hands suddenly unsteady. AC, Alex Carter. My initials. I checked my own datebook, pulling it from my jacket pocket. The entry for February 12th was blank. I never missed recording appointments. Unless. I flipped back to February 12th and examined it more closely. The page had a subtle difference in texture, as if it had been replaced. When I held it to the light, I could see the ghost of writing that had been erased. Something was very wrong here. I moved to the bathroom, the last room to check. The mirror above the sink was immaculate, but something about it seemed off. I leaned in closer, examining the edges. There, in the bottom right corner, barely visible, was a small inscription. Don't trust them. I ran my finger over the words. They appeared to have been etched with the tip of a razor blade, hurried, desperate. Who was them? And why would Haynes leave such a cryptic warning? My inspection was interrupted by a noise from the hallway, a floorboard creaking under weight. Someone else was in the apartment. I silently moved behind the bathroom door, listening. Soft footsteps approached, too deliberate to be casual. Whoever it was, they were trying not to be heard. The bathroom door slowly pushed open. I held my breath, muscles tensed. A figure stepped into view, a woman in her 30s, dark hair pulled back in a severe ponytail, wearing rimless glasses and a library ID badge. Mr. Haynes, she whispered. I stepped forward. He's dead. She spun around with surprising agility, dropping into a defensive stance that told me she had training. Not your average librarian. Who are you? Her voice was steady, but her eyes darted to the exits, calculating. I could ask you the same thing, I replied, keeping my hands visible. I'm Alex Carter, private investigator. Her posture relaxed slightly, but the wariness remained. Eliza Sutton. I work with Daniel at the archives. She straightened her glasses. What do you mean he's dead? Heart attack, apparently. Found yesterday morning. I studied her reaction. There was shock, but not surprise. You don't seem too startled by the news. Eliza looked away. Daniel was concerned about something he found. He'd been acting strange for weeks. Paranoid. Keeping odd hours. And you came to his apartment at 5 a.m. because he hadn't shown up for work, wasn't answering his phone. It's not like him. She crossed her arms. Why are you here? Did Daniel hire you? According to his calendar, we had a meeting 3 days ago. But I don't remember it. Eliza's eyes widened. You don't remember? She took a step back. Oh God, it's happening again. What's happening again? I took a step toward her, but she retreated further. I shouldn't be here. Neither should you. If they know we've connected, she moved quickly toward the door. Wait. I called after her. Who's they? What did Haynes find? She paused at the threshold, her expression torn between fear and a desperate need to explain. Look up the Reisman experiment, 1981. Daniel found the original records. She glanced down the hallway nervously. They were buried for a reason. With that, she was gone, her footsteps receding rapidly down the hallway. I considered following her but decided against it. Better to let her think she'd escaped me. I could find her at the library later. I did one final sweep of the apartment, looking for anything I might have missed. In the study, I noticed something odd about the bookshelf, a slight gap between the wall and the frame, as if it had been moved recently. I pushed it aside, revealing a small wall safe. It was open. Empty. Whatever Haynes had considered worth protecting was gone. Or had been removed. Dawn was breaking as I left the building. The street was still quiet, but I had the distinct feeling of being watched. I scanned the area, noting a black sedan parked at the far end of the block. Its windows were tinted, making it impossible to see the occupants. As I approached my car, the sedan's engine started. I quickly got into my vehicle and pulled out into the street, taking the first right turn. The sedan followed at a discreet distance. Amateur hour. If they wanted to tail me without being noticed, they needed better training. I led my follower on a complicated route through side streets and alleys before abruptly doubling back and positioning myself behind them. Now I was the follower. The sedan seemed to realize the tables had turned and accelerated, running a red light to escape. I memorized the license plate before letting them go. No point in a high-speed chase through morning traffic. Besides, I had other leads to follow. My office was a small suite in a weathered brick building in Echo Park. I kept it simple: a desk, a couple of chairs for clients, filing cabinets, and a coffee maker that had seen better days. The rent was reasonable, and the location worked for my predominantly East Side clientele. I unlocked the door and immediately sensed something was wrong. Nothing obvious, no broken furniture or ransacked drawers, but the air felt disturbed, as if someone had recently passed through. I did a quick check of my security measures. The hair I always placed across the filing cabinet drawer was missing. Someone had been looking at my files. I booted up my computer and accessed the security camera footage. Sure enough, there was a gap in the recording from 11 p.m. to midnight last night. Someone had disabled the system and then reactivated it, thinking I wouldn't notice the time discrepancy. But they'd made one mistake. The corridor camera outside my office, maintained by the building management, was still intact. I called the building supervisor and asked him to email me yesterday's footage. While waiting, I checked the license plate I'd memorized. It belonged to a rental car checked out to a Smith, John. Original. The address given was a hotel in downtown LA. My computer pinged with the incoming email from the building supervisor. I played the corridor footage, fast-forwarding to 11 p.m. A man in a dark suit approached my door, glancing up and down the hallway before picking the lock with practiced efficiency. He was inside for almost 40 minutes before emerging again. Just as he turned to leave, the camera caught his face. I froze the frame. It was me. Or someone who looked remarkably like me. My doppelganger had the same build, same hair, same features. But there was something subtly different in his eyes, in the way he carried himself. More rigid, more mechanical. I sat back, mind racing. Was this some elaborate setup? Identity theft? Or something more sinister? I checked my files to see what the intruder might have been interested in. Nothing seemed to be missing, but I noticed fingerprints in the dust on one drawer, the one containing old case notes from my police days. The desk phone rang, startling me. I hesitated before answering. "Alex Carter," I said. "Detective Carter." The voice was muffled, distorted. "Stop looking. Some doors should remain closed." "Who is this? You've stumbled into something beyond your understanding. Walk away." I don't respond well to threats. A pause. "It's not a threat. It's a warning. For your own protection." "From what?" "From what happened to Haynes. From what happens to everyone who gets too close to the truth." The line went dead. I dialed *69, but the call was listed as coming from a pay phone, one of the few remaining in the city. I needed more information about this Reisman experiment that Eliza had mentioned. I considered going directly to the library archives, but if Haynes had been under surveillance, the archives would likely be watched as well. I needed another approach. I had a contact at UCLA's physics department, Dr. Sarah Jenkins. We'd dated briefly years ago, before her work and my cases pulled us in different directions. We'd remained on friendly terms, occasionally meeting for coffee when our paths crossed. I dialed her office number. "Jenkins," she answered, her voice warm with the slight Texas drawl she'd never fully shed. "Sarah, it's Alex." Well. I could hear the smile in her voice. The mysterious detective emerges from the shadows. "To what do I owe this unexpected pleasure? I need your expertise on something. Have you ever heard of the Reisman experiment from 1981? The line went quiet. Too quiet. "Sarah? Where did you hear that name?" Her voice had lost all warmth. "It came up in a case I'm working on." "Alex, listen to me carefully." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "That project was classified. Officially, it never happened. But it did happen." Another long pause. "Meet me at the usual place. 1 hour. Don't call this number again." She hung up. Our usual place was a small coffee shop near the UCLA campus, neutral ground, with enough ambient noise to make eavesdropping difficult. I arrived early, choosing a table in the back corner with a view of both entrances. Sarah entered precisely on time, looking much the same as when I'd last seen her, auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, minimal makeup, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. She ordered at the counter before joining me, her movements casual but her eyes constantly scanning the room. "You look good, Alex," she said as she sat down. "So do you. Thanks for meeting me." She leaned forward. "What exactly are you involved in?" I gave her the condensed version: Daniel Haynes, his mysterious death, the strange message, and Eliza Sutton's reference to the Reisman experiment. Sarah listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly troubled. When the barista brought her coffee, she waited until he was out of earshot before speaking. Dr. Edward Reisman was a theoretical physicist specializing in quantum mechanics. In 1981, he led a classified project funded by DARPA. The goal was to explore the practical applications of Wheeler-Feynman absorber theory. "In English, please." She sighed. They were investigating whether information could be sent backward through time. I blinked. Time travel? Not physical travel, information transfer. Reisman believed that quantum particles could, in theory, influence their own past states. She took a sip of her coffee. The experiment was shut down after 6 months. 3 researchers died in what was officially ruled a lab accident. The records were sealed. And unofficially? Sarah hesitated. Rumors circulated that they'd succeeded. That they'd managed to send data back in time, creating a causality loop. What kind of data? I don't know. But whatever it was, it scared the hell out of someone. She pulled a flash drive from her pocket and slid it across the table. "This contains everything I could find about Reisman and his work. Most of it is heavily redacted, but it's a start." I pocketed the drive. "Thank you." She grabbed my wrist. "Alex, be careful. There are agencies that monitor any research related to Reisman's work. If Haynes found something in those archives..." "He might have been silenced," I finished. Sarah nodded grimly. "And you might be next." As we left the coffee shop, I noticed a familiar black sedan across the street. Our tail had found us. Sarah saw it too. "You've got company," she murmured. "They've been following me since this morning. Go out the back. I'll create a distraction." Before I could protest, she headed toward the front entrance. I slipped out through the kitchen, ignoring the surprised looks from the staff. As I emerged into the alley behind the shop, I heard commotion from the street, Sarah making good on her promise of a distraction. I made my way back to my office through a circuitous route, checking repeatedly for tails. The flash drive burned in my pocket like a live coal. Back at my desk, I plugged it in, bypassing my internet connection as a precaution. The files were exactly as Sarah had described: heavily redacted reports, partial schematics, personnel lists with most names blacked out. But one photo caught my attention, a group shot of the research team. Standing at the edge of the group was a young man whose face had been only partially obscured by the sensor's marker. I could still make out enough features to recognize him. Daniel Haynes. 40 years younger, but unmistakably him. Which was impossible. Haynes would have been a child in 1981. Unless. My phone rang. The caller ID showed Daniel Haynes. I answered, my mouth suddenly dry. Hello. The circle can be broken, detective. The voice was Haynes's. I recognized it from the security footage of our supposed meeting. But you have to believe first. Believe what? That you're calling me from beyond the grave? A soft laugh. Time isn't what you think it is, detective. Neither are you. What does that mean? Check your security footage from February 12th. All of it. Then meet me where it began. The line went dead. I would have dismissed it as a sick joke, except for one thing: the call didn't register in my phone's log. When I checked, there was no record of any incoming call in the last hour. Just like in Haynes's apartment. I pulled up the security footage from February 12th and watched as Haynes entered my office at precisely 2:35 p.m. 10 minutes later, another figure entered, me. But I had no memory of it. As I watched myself shake hands with a dead man, a terrible suspicion began to form. What if time wasn't linear? What if the answers weren't in the past or the future, but in the loops between them? I checked my watch. It was 3:17 p.m. The phone began to ring again.